Space was silent. The moon was calm, cold, and dark. Far away from the moon on Earth, inside a control room in India, hundreds of eyes were fixed on big screens. No one was talking, every second felt heavy. Engineers were breathing slowly, scientists were holding their breath. This was not a normal night. This was the night when India was trying something that many countries had failed to do. In the control room, one senior scientist quietly looked at the clock. His hands were shaking, but his face was calm. He knew this moment could change everything. Years of hard work, hope, and pressure were now reduced to a few signals coming from space. Suddenly, a soft voice broke the silence. "Signal is weak." The room became even more silent. Everyone understood what this meant. A weak signal in space missions is dangerous. Sometimes it is the first sign of failure. The moon does not forgive mistakes. Across the room, a young engineer stared at the screen. His heart was beating fast. He remembered the last time this happened. He remembered the pain. He remembered the silence after losing contact. This mission was not just about technology, it was about redemption. Years ago, India had tried to land on the moon. The dream was big, but the ending was painful. The lander lost contact just before landing. The world watched. Some supported India, but many doubted its abilities. Now, India was back, but this time the challenge was even harder. The spacecraft was heading toward the moon's south pole, a place where no country had ever landed before, a place covered in shadows, deep craters, and extreme cold, a place that even NASA had avoided. Why was India going there? Because the future of space exploration was hidden there. Inside the control room, the mission director slowly stood up. He looked at his team. He did not shout. He did not panic. In a calm but serious voice, he said, "Stay focused. We are not done yet." Outside the control room, cameras from all over the world were waiting. News channels were live. People in India were praying. Students were watching from classrooms. Families were watching from their homes. But inside the control room, emotions were locked away. Only data mattered. Then came the call, not a normal call, a desperate one. The spacecraft was entering its most dangerous phase. The landing sequence had started. This phase was called the terror phase by scientists, because once it starts, there is no way back. The spacecraft must decide on its own. Speed had to reduce, angle had to be perfect, sensors had to work, engines had to fire at the right time. One small error could crash the mission. A scientist quietly whispered, "This is it." Suddenly, an alarm sound echoed. For a second, everyone froze. The signal dropped again. This time, it was worse. The data screen showed delays. The numbers were not updating smoothly. Communication from the spacecraft was unstable. The mission director immediately picked up a phone. This was the desperate call, not to the media, not to politicians, but to the core technical team. "We need confirmation," he said calmly, hiding his fear. "Check all backup systems now." Engineers started typing faster. Fingers moved quickly over keyboards. Eyes scanned lines of data. Sweat rolled down faces. Time was running out. The moon was getting closer. In space missions, there is a rule: hope is dangerous, but panic is deadly, so everyone stayed calm. Minutes felt like hours. Then a voice came from the back of the room. Engines responding. A small relief spread across the room, but no one smiled. It was not over. The spacecraft was still descending. Outside, people were cheering too early. Social media was full of excitement. But inside the control room, no one celebrated. They knew the truth. Landing on the moon is not about hope, it is about precision. Another update came. Altitude decreasing. The moon's surface was now very close. The spacecraft had only seconds to decide where to land. Rocks, craters, shadows everywhere, then silence. No data, no signal. The control room went completely quiet. No one moved, no one spoke. This silence was louder than any alarm. The mission director closed his eyes for 1 second. He remembered the past failure. He remembered the questions. He remembered the doubt. Was history repeating itself? Then suddenly a small green light blinked on the screen. A signal returned, weak but alive. The room did not celebrate yet because the most dangerous moment was still ahead, the final descent, and no one knew what would happen next. To be continued, the green light was still blinking. Inside the control room, no one clapped, no one smiled. Everyone knew this light did not mean success. It only meant one thing: the spacecraft was still alive, but alive was not enough. The moon was pulling it closer every second. A senior engineer slowly leaned forward. His eyes were fixed on the altitude numbers. They were dropping fast, too fast. "This is dangerous," he said quietly. The spacecraft was supposed to slow down, but gravity does not wait for permission. If the engines failed even for a few seconds, the lander would crash. Again, the room remembered the past without saying a word. One young scientist looked at the big screen. His lips were dry. He had joined ISRO after the last failed mission. He promised himself that this time would be different. He promised his family. He promised his country. Now that promise was hanging in space. The mission director broke the silence. "Switch to manual correction logic," he said. This was not an easy decision. In space missions, every command is risky. Too many commands can confuse the system. Too few commands can destroy it. This was a balance between control and trust. The spacecraft was millions of kilometers away. Signals took time to travel. By the time Earth sent a command, the spacecraft had already moved. This meant one thing: the spacecraft had to think on its own. Artificial intelligence, auto-navigation, smart sensors. All these systems were now responsible for history. Outside the control room, the world was loud. News anchors were shouting, social media was exploding, some people were celebrating, some were already calling it a success. But inside the control room, fear was honest. A small mistake showed on the screen, velocity slightly higher than planned, not enough to panic, but enough to worry. Correcting trajectory, an engineer said. Seconds passed, no response. Then suddenly, numbers changed. Velocity dropped. A quiet breath escaped from many mouths at the same time, but again no celebration. The moon was still below, closer, colder, unforgiving. The spacecraft entered the shadow region of the moon. Sunlight disappeared, temperatures dropped sharply, sensors had to work in extreme cold. This region was called the blind zone. No camera could clearly see the surface. The spacecraft was landing without eyes, only calculations, only faith in engineering. The mission director whispered, "Hold steady." Then something unexpected happened. The terrain data showed uneven ground, rocks, large craters. This was not the planned landing spot. The spacecraft had to decide: land here and risk crashing, or move sideways and search for safety. This decision had to be made in seconds. No human could help now. The spacecraft tilted slightly. The room gasped. Fuel levels dropped faster. Side movement uses more fuel. Fuel was limited, very limited. A scientist softly said, "If fuel runs out." He did not finish the sentence. Everyone knew the ending. Suddenly the onboard system detected a safer zone. Flat, less rocks, still dangerous, but better. The spacecraft moved again. Altitude 800 meters, 700 meters, 600 meters. The sound of keyboards stopped. No more commands, no more changes. Now, only the final descent remained. One engineer closed his eyes. Another held his hands together. Some were quietly praying. Others were staring without blinking. This was not science anymore. This was belief. Then a warning flashed. Communication delay increased. Signals were lagging. Earth was becoming blind. The spacecraft was alone, completely alone. Altitude 300 meters. The engines fired again. Dust rose from the moon's surface. The sensors struggled. Data came in broken pieces. Altitude 150 meters. The control room heartbeat was louder than any machine. Then silence, total silence. No signal, no data, no green light. The screens froze. Time stopped. No one moved, no one spoke. 10 seconds passed, 20 seconds, 30. This silence was worse than failure, because failure at least gives an answer. The mission director slowly removed his glasses. He did not look away from the screen. In his mind, he was already preparing for another painful announcement. Then a soft beep. One screen refreshed. A single word appeared. Contact, weak, delayed, but real. The room was still silent because one final message was yet to come, the most important message. The message that would decide whether this mission would be remembered as a miracle or another lesson. And that message had not arrived yet. To be continued, the word contact was still on the screen. But there was no cheer. No sound, only fear, because contact does not mean landing. It only means the spacecraft is still talking. The moon was still there, the danger was still there. A senior scientist slowly stood up. His legs felt weak. He had waited for this moment for more than 10 years, but now when it was here, he was afraid to trust it. "Check vertical velocity," he said softly. An engineer typed quickly. The numbers appeared too fast, not safe. If the spacecraft touched the moon at this speed, it would break. No soft landing, no success, only silence forever. Fuel was almost gone. There was no second chance. The moon does not give second chances. The spacecraft was now less than 50 meters above the surface. At this height, even a small stone could destroy the mission. The dust from the engines covered the sensors. The cameras showed nothing clear. The surface was a blur. The spacecraft was landing blind. A young engineer whispered, "It's guessing." He was right. The lander was not seeing the moon. It was feeling it, using radar, using memory, using calculations made years ago. This machine was trusting the past. Suddenly, a new warning appeared. Auto-correction limit reached. This was dangerous. It meant the spacecraft could not adjust anymore. What you see now, this is the final path. If it was wrong, history would end here. The mission director clenched his fist. He did not speak. He knew that words could not change anything now. Outside, millions of people were waiting for one sentence. India has landed. But inside the control room, nobody wanted to say anything too early. Altitude 20 meters, the engines slowed, the descent became gentle. For the first time, hope quietly entered the room, but hope is dangerous in space. Then suddenly a sharp data spike. The lander tilted just a little, but enough to scare everyone. If it tilted more, would fall. The moon's gravity is weak, but betrayal is strong. "Stabilize, stabilize," someone whispered. The spacecraft adjusted itself, slowly, carefully. Fuel dropped to critical level. There was no fuel left for correction, only for landing. Altitude 5 meters, 4, 3, 2, 1, then nothing, no sound, no signal, no message. The screens went blank. The control room froze. This time no one breathed. A scientist dropped his pen. It hit the sound was loud, painfully loud. 10 seconds passed, then 20, then 30, no confirmation, no data, no celebration, just silence. The same silence as years ago, the same fear, the same question. Did it crash again? The mission director closed his eyes. He did not want to see the screen anymore. He had seen this ending before. Then suddenly a new signal, very slow, very weak. A line of text appeared. It took time to load. Every letter felt heavy. Finally, the message was complete. Touchdown detected. The room did not react because sometimes joy feels unreal. The system needed confirmation. Secondary sensors checked. Load sensors responded. Thermal data stabilized. Then the final message appeared, the one sentence the world was waiting for. Lander is stable. For 1 second the room was silent. Then tears, hands in the air, people hugging, some laughing, some crying, some unable to speak. History had changed quietly. Without noise, without drama. Just a machine resting on the moon, but this was not the end because the moon had secrets and Chandrayaan had not come alone. Something was about to wake up. Something that would surprise the world. To be continued. The celebration did not last long. Inside the control room, happiness slowly turned into silence again. Everyone knew one truth. Landing was only step one. The moon does not care about celebrations. The lander was resting on unknown ground. No one knew if the surface was strong or weak. One wrong move could still end the mission. The mission director raised his hand. "Stop all movement," he said. The lander obeyed. For a few seconds it did nothing. It just stayed there, listening. The moon was not quiet anymore. Temperature data started coming in. The numbers shocked the scientists. The surface was colder than expected. Much colder. "This is dangerous for electronics," a scientist said. The lander had to survive extreme cold nights. No sunlight, no warmth, only darkness. Power was limited. Time was limited. The lander slowly adjusted its position to face the sun. Solar panels tried to wake up. Then came the next big question. Was the rover alive? The rover was sleeping inside the lander. It had not moved since launch. It had traveled millions of kilometers in silence. Now it had to wake up. "Begin rover systems check." The mission director said. Commands were sent. Seconds passed. Nothing. The rover did not respond. A small fear returned. "Check power line," someone said. Engineers checked again. Another command was sent. Still nothing. The moon does not hurry. Then suddenly a signal, very small but clear. The rover was breathing. Relief moved through the room like a quiet wave. But the hardest part was still ahead. The rover had to come out. The ramp slowly opened. The metal moved carefully. Dust fell from the lander's legs. The cameras showed the moon's surface for the first time. It was not beautiful. It was rough, broken, silent, no color, only gray. The rover waited. It did not move. Scientists held their breath again. "Slow deployment mode," the mission director ordered. The rover's wheels moved slightly, then stopped. One wheel did not respond. This was bad. If one wheel failed, the rover could not move properly. The mission would be limited. Engineers worked fast. They checked commands, they checked data. Finally, the wheel responded, very slowly, very carefully. The rover moved forward, one small step, then another, and then it touched the moon, a machine made on Earth standing on another world. No human voice was there, no sound, only data. The rover sent its first image, a shadow, the rover's own shadow. That shadow meant something powerful. It meant the rover was real. It meant this was not a dream. People in the control room stared at the screen. Some smiled softly, some wiped tears, but one scientist noticed something strange. The shadow was longer than expected. "This angle is odd," he said. They checked the sun's position, they checked the terrain. Something was different. The surface slope was not normal. The rover was standing near a small dip, not dangerous, but unusual. The moon was hiding something. "This area was not mapped clearly," a scientist said. That meant one thing: this place had not been explored. This was unknown moon, excitement mixed with fear. The rover sent temperature readings. The numbers were shocking. The ground temperature changed very fast, faster than models predicted. "This data is new," someone whispered. No one had seen this before. This was not just a mission. This was discovery, but discoveries always come with risk. The rover stood still, waiting, as if the moon was watching back, and somewhere far away. Other space agencies were also watching. Carefully, quietly, because India had done something unexpected and the world had started paying attention. To be continued. Full moon. The rover did not move for a long time. Inside the control room, this silence was planned. Scientists were not rushing. They knew one mistake could end everything. The moon was still cold. The ground was still unknown. The rover was told to wait. Its sensors were active. Its eyes were open. Its mind was working. The first task was simple: measure the ground. A small instrument moved down and touched the lunar soil. The rover stayed still like it was listening to the moon. Data started coming in. At first, everything looked normal. Then a scientist leaned closer to the screen. "These numbers," he said slowly, "they are not matching." The temperature of the surface was changing too fast, much faster than expected. The difference between shadow and light was extreme. This was strange. Previous missions had never recorded this kind of behavior. The moon was acting differently here. Someone quietly said, "This is not normal lunar soil." The room became alert, more data arrived. The soil was harder below the surface but soft on top. This layer pattern was unusual. It suggested something important, possibly water ice. No one said the word loudly because saying it without proof was dangerous. The rover was commanded to move forward. Slowly, very slowly. Each wheel turn was careful. The rover was not exploring blindly, it was choosing every step. The camera sent new images, small stones, sharp edges, deep shadows. This place had never seen sunlight for long periods. That was the reason this place mattered. The rover stopped again. Another instrument activated. It checked the chemical makeup of the soil. The results appeared line by line. Oxygen, silicon, iron, normal. Then a new reading, very small. But real hydrogen. The scientist froze. He checked again. The reading did not disappear, it stayed. Hydrogen at the moon's south pole meant something serious. It meant the future, fuel, water, life support. This one data point could change space travel forever. The room stayed quiet, no shouting, no cheering, because everyone understood the weight of this moment. Far away in other countries, similar control rooms were also active. Screens were being watched. Data was being compared. Experts were asking questions. How did they land there? How are they getting this data? How much did this mission cost? The answers were uncomfortable because this mission was simple. No extra drama, no expensive systems, no loud claims, just smart planning. Back in the control room, the mission director looked at his team. "This data must be verified," he said. 3 times, no mistakes. The rover repeated the test. Same result. Again. Same result. Hydrogen was real. The moon had quietly revealed something, and it had chosen this mission to do it. The rover sent more images. One image showed a small area where the surface looked different, slightly darker, slightly smoother. "This area is special," a scientist said. The rover was told not to touch it, not yet, because touching the wrong place could destroy the sample. This was not a race. This was patience. The moon had waited billions of years. It could wait a few more hours. As Earth slowly rotated, news started spreading, not loudly, not officially, but quietly. Experts started talking, agencies started listening. Silence became attention because something had changed, not with noise, not with power, but with proof. The rover stopped again, its shadow stretched long on the lunar ground. The sun was low. The lunar night was coming. Soon, temperatures would drop to deadly levels. Rover had one last chance before darkness. One last move. And that move would decide whether this mission would only be remembered as a successful landing or as the mission that changed humanity's future in space. The command was prepared, everyone waited. The moon waited too, to be continued. The sun was going down. On the moon, sunset is not beautiful, it is deadly. Inside the control room, everyone knew this truth. Once the lunar night began, temperatures would fall very fast. So cold that metal could crack, so cold that batteries could die. The rover did not have heaters strong enough to survive the night. This mission had a clock, and that clock was almost out of time. The rover stood still near the special area, the darker surface, the place that looked different. This was the moment scientists had prepared for, but preparation does not remove fear. The mission director looked at the screen. He spoke slowly. "One final experiment," he said. Then stop. No one argued, everyone knew the risk. If the rover moved too much, it could slip. If it drilled too deep, it could get stuck. If it stayed too long, night would kill it. The rover received the command, move forward. Very slowly the wheels turned, dust rose gently and then fell back to silence. The rover stopped exactly where planned. The instrument arm extended. This arm had only one chance. If it failed, there was no repair. The arm touched the surface. Pressure data came in. Normal, then the drill started. Soft vibration, very slow speed. Inside the control room, no one blinked. The drill went a little deeper, then it stopped. A warning appeared. Resistance detected. This was bad. Hard ground could break the drill. If the drill broke, the mission would lose its most important tool. Engineers quickly checked the numbers. The resistance was uneven, not solid rock, something else. "Continue," the mission director said quietly. The drill moved again. A few more centimeters, then it stopped completely. For a second, it looked like the drill was stuck. Fear returned. If the drill got stuck, the rover might not move again. But then the resistance dropped. The drill went deeper easily. The soil changed. Data started flowing fast. The control room came alive. Numbers, graphs, signals. The chemical analyzer activated. Results appeared line by line. Oxygen, iron, silicon, then again hydrogen, stronger this time. More clear, more certain. A scientist slowly removed his glasses. "This confirms it," he said softly. No one shouted, no one jumped, because this was not just discovery, this was responsibility. Water on the moon means future missions, fuel production, human presence. This small rover was changing big plans, but the sun was almost gone, shadows grew longer, the temperature dropped fast. "End experiment," the mission director ordered. The drill stopped. The arm pulled back. The rover moved away slightly to a safer position. Then came the final command, prepare for sleep mode. This was the hardest command because sleep on the moon can mean forever. The rover sent its last full image, a lonely lander, a silent surface, a long shadow. Then systems started shutting down, one by one, cameras off, instruments off. movement locked, only a small signal remained, a heartbeat. Inside the control room, people stood up slowly. Some were smiling, some were crying quietly. They knew the truth. Even if the rover never woke up again, it had already done enough. Far away in other parts of the world, experts were now speaking openly. Reports were being written, meetings were being planned, the world was reacting, but the rover did not care. It rested on the moon. Cold was coming, darkness was coming, and no one knew if this brave machine would ever speak again. But one thing was certain. The moon was no longer silent. To be continued, the moon was dark now. The rover was silent. Inside the control room, the screens were still on, but nothing was moving. The mission had entered waiting mode, no commands, no experiments, only hope. Some scientists stayed seated, some stood quietly. No one wanted to leave. This silence felt different. It was not fear, it was respect. Hours later, as Earth turned and morning reached other countries, something changed. Messages started coming in, slowly at first, then faster. Experts from different space agencies began asking for data, not questions, requests. This was new. India was no longer explaining itself. Others were listening. In one corner of the control room, a scientist checked his email. He read the message twice to be sure. "They want our thermal data," he said softly. Another message came, "and our landing software logic." This was important. For years, India had asked for guidance. For years, it had learned quietly. Now the world wanted to learn from India. The mission director said nothing. He just nodded. "Share verified data," he said. "Nothing more, nothing less." Outside, news channels had changed their tone. Earlier they had asked, "Can India do it?" Now they were asking, "How did India do it?" The difference was powerful. Reports talked about low budget, simple design, smart planning. The word efficient was used again and again. In classrooms, teachers paused lessons to explain the mission. Students watched images of the rover's shadow on the moon. They did not see metal and wires, they saw possibility. In villages and cities, people felt proud, even if they did not fully understand the science. They understood one thing: this mission mattered. Back in the control room, a young engineer stared at the last image sent by the rover. He remembered the fear before landing. The silence, the waiting, now that fear was gone, replaced by calm. Then late into the night, a soft sound came from one screen, a beep, very faint. A signal tried to return, not full communication, not clear data, just a whisper. The rover was trying. Scientists leaned forward. "Is it alive?" someone asked. The data was too weak, no confirmation. The moon night was harsh. Temperatures were far below survival limits. The rover might never wake up fully again. But that did not feel like failure, because sometimes success is not about how long you survive. It is about what you change. The mission director looked at his team. "We did what we came to do," he said. No applause followed, only quiet smiles. Far away, space agencies were rewriting plans. South Pole missions were no longer theory. They were reality now, and that reality had started with a small rover, made with limited money, driven by belief, guided by patience. The moon had tested many nations. This time it had accepted one, not loudly, not dramatically, but clearly. And as Earth slept, a simple truth settled into history. India had not just reached the moon. India had changed the direction of space exploration. One final part still remained. The meaning of this mission, not for scientists, but for the future, to be continued. The moon was silent again. The rover did not speak. The lander did not move. But the mission was not over, because some missions do not end on the surface of another world. They end inside people. Inside the control room, the screens were slowly turned off, one by one. The lights became dim. Scientists packed their bags. Engineers stretched their tired arms. Months of tension were finally leaving their bodies. This was not happiness. This was peace. The mission director took one last look at the moon image on the wall. He did not smile loudly. He did not raise his hands. He simply nodded, because he knew what this mission really meant. For years, India was seen as a learner in space. Careful, quiet, always watching others. This mission changed that image, not by copying, not by spending more money, but by thinking differently. The moon's south pole was once ignored, too risky, too cold, too dark, too uncertain. But uncertainty is where discovery lives. This mission proved something simple. You do not need the biggest budget. You do not need the loudest voice. You need patience, you need courage, and you need trust in your people. Across the world, space plans were changing. Missions were being redesigned. South Pole maps were being studied again. One small rover had shifted global focus. In schools, children drew pictures of the moon with a small rover next to it. Some wrote their dreams under those drawings. "I want to be a scientist. I want to work in space. I want to build machines." That was the real success, not headlines, not medals, inspiration. The moon had always been far away, a symbol, a dream, something to look at. Now it felt closer, reachable, human. The rover might never wake up again. The lander might stay silent forever, but silence does not mean loss. Sometimes silence means the work is done. The moon did not give applause. It did not send a message. It simply allowed a small machine to rest on its surface. That was enough, because history does not always announce itself. Sometimes it arrives quietly, lands softly, and changes everything. The end.